Good evening and welcome to the Grace Talk. Our topic today is one that is near and dear to the hearts of many in our listening audience. Public schools and our freedom as Christians to represent our faith in the public school system. If you are a teacher, or if you have a child or grandchild in the public school system, or maybe you have a niece or nephew in the public school system, this show is for you. We are going to tell you the ability that you have to speak up and to represent your faith in the classroom. This ability exists today, and my guest is going to tell you about it, and not only tell you about it, but tell you where you can find it for yourself. Please join me to welcome Nixie Larimore to the Grace Talk.
Thank
welcome,
you.
Nixie.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Nixie, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a grandmother. I just welcomed my fourth grandchild to my daughter,
Congratulations.
who lives in Maryland, right? And my husband is back in California as we speak, but I am here in Delaware to work for this kind of information, just sharing with the public about the religious liberties of public schools. The religious liberty of public school students right in the public schools.
This is something you do across the country now, training parents and teachers and students and empowering them to go into the public schools with the rights that they currently have right now.
Yeah.
So talk to us, how did you get here?
It's been a wonderful journey, and it all started for me in Delaware. When I lived in Delaware, I began working with Nicole Tice and Delaware Family Policy Council. And what we did together is we formed what we call Freedom Educators. And it's a sustained effort to empower teachers and parents and students that are using the public school just to fully educate them about the religious liberty in our country and how that applies to the public schools. So one of the first things that Nicole Tice and Freedom Educators did is we invited Eric Brewer from Gateways to Better Education to come to Delaware State University, and we hosted 80 educators. That was in 2011, our first event. And he was explaining these beautiful things to us, that American religious liberty law truly is a message of freedom for teachers and students in the public school. So we were just enthralled, of course. And I asked him after the conference to train me so that this message could be more broadly shared in our nation. And since then, I have been assigned by Eric and Gateways to travel and speak to teachers and educators and parents using the public school. And it's quite a message of freedom.
Wow, this is so different from what we have been hearing. First of all, a big shout out to Nicole Tice and Delaware Family Policy Council. What a tremendous job that they're doing. And this was in 2011.
Yes.
To bring this level of information and clarity to the students and teachers. So now, talk to us from 2011. You were trained. What were you trained in?
Well, I am trained to move teachers and students from fear to freedom. It's wonderful when I meet with educators that gather for our professional development through Gateways or even materials that Freedom Educators has put together. The message is always the same. You can be free by lunch, and they kind of go, well, we'll see, because they want to hear about the legal parameters. Everyone's concerned about that. But you're right. What we first start to explore is what the Supreme Court really did say and what it has not said. And the high courts support religious liberty in our nation. And it's very, very concerning to realize that we have this wrong. We don't have religious liberty right in our schools. We have it wrong. And a lot of why we have it wrong is we have begun to honor this phrase. And you knew it when we talked. And I just spoke this morning in Hockessin, and it was the same thing. The audience can figure it out, and they can actually repeat this very common phrase that is used to say no to religious expression at the public school. And the audience right now could probably guess. What is the phrase that's used as kind of like an authoritative mandate that no, there should be no religious expression at the public school? And you know it. It's separation of church and state. Right. So that is honored as if it is something that requires the shutdown of religious expression of students and even of teachers at the school. And it's false. That's a phrase from a letter that Jefferson wrote, but when he wrote that letter, it was to a Baptist woman, and she was asking if our new government in America at the time of the Constitution being ratified, was this new form of government going to protect her as a Baptist Christian woman against the entanglement of government? And he said, yes, we have built a government that has a wall of separation. But what he meant, and what I wish he would have said, was we have created a wall of protection for the church from the state. Because that's what we really have. And so what we really try to encourage parents and students and teachers to do is, and this is what our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom say, they want us to start thinking like a lawyer and go back to the real basis of these policies and practices at school, which should be our First Amendment, which is our guarantee of religious expression, because the First Amendment is what says there can be no prohibiting the free exercise of religion. So those rights are still our students' rights when they go into the doors of a public school. So
I love that. Did you hear that? From fear to freedom.
yes.
And if we can, there's been a lot of intimidation, a lot of fear mongering. And we're going to talk about that because that's important before we go to the freedom part.
Yeah.
But where is that fear coming from? What is the fear that teachers and students have in the public school?
Yeah. So a lot of the fear is the punishment of getting it wrong, right? Everyone's trying to do it right, and there's a lot of misinformation. So it's created a lot of censorship and shutdown in our schools. I'd like to use a Thanksgiving example because that holiday is right
Around the corner.
right around the corner. So this story comes from out west, and a public school out west was going to create a big mural, just a huge display in their school of what their students were thankful for. And so they're going to have this turkey, and all the feathers, the hundreds of feathers, would be contributed by the student body. And they're going to write what they're thankful for on these feathers, and they're all going to go up and create this big fan of feathers for the turkey. It's lovely, right? So as you might imagine, many of the students would put religious type themed thankfulness, gratitude items on their feathers. For example, sweet little second grade class, the teacher was observing that really half of the students were putting on their feathers that they were thankful for God. And they mentioned that they were thankful for their parents or their puppy or food or their bedroom or whatever. But many of them put that they were thankful for God. Now, the teacher has fear. Now, she is fine, and really her heart is warm that the students are mentioning God, but she has fear because she's not sure if this is going to be okay. One, she's not sure if it's okay in our country at large, and then secondly, she's not sure, even if it's right, is it going to still be okay at my school? How does my principal feel? What should I do as the class leader? So when she didn't know, she just let it move forward because she felt she wasn't pressuring anyone. The students were free to write whatever on their feathers, right? And so she moved along in that freedom. And the feathers went up on the mural from her class, many of them saying that students were thankful for God. The principal saw this, and she was very, very uncomfortable. And she went right to the teacher, and she said, you can't let students do this. We can't have they're thankful for God on the wall of our school because our school is a public school, and separation of church and state. And so there's a lot of fear now in the administrator, the principal. She's worried about these feathers. And so she asks the teacher to take them down and to coach her class to fill out a new feather and to not have any religious expression in these feathers. And the teacher was so stirred by that. She was so disappointed that she didn't really know the right thing. And in her ignorance, she had to just go ahead and share a message of shutdown with these sweet second graders. These are like 7, 8-year-old sweet children. And she felt so uncomfortable, but she did obey, and she asked them to do another feather. And they rolled with it pretty well. But when that was done, the next day she was online searching. I've got to know, I have to do better to know, what does it look like to get this right? I think the students have freedom of expression, but yet my principal was uncomfortable, and I'm certainly uncomfortable in my ignorance. And so on her online search, she came across Gateways to Better Education. She took the online module that we offer about religious liberty law, and she was able to share with the principal, and the whole district was able to gain clarification that those students actually did have freedom to express their faith, and it's okay to have that on the wall because it was their student expression. Which takes us directly to this pamphlet, but we'll get to that whenever you want to. But it's so beautiful what happens with the empowerment of the facts and the real knowledge about religious liberty law in our country.
Absolutely. Listen, so what you're hearing is the fear is real. But what we're telling you today, what Nix is telling you, is that that fear is not justified. And we're going to transition now to tell us, what can we do? Where is the freedom that we have?
Yes.
What rights do we have?
Yeah, it's truly the First Amendment that decides everything, and it is not the separation of church and state mantra that decides things in court. And so what you'll find is that the Department of Education has come down on the rules and the guidelines, and they're really trying to help us get religious liberty right. But the problem is this information is just not as communicated as it should be. And so over the years, we have come across what Gateways has put together, and it basically is a very student-friendly version of the very full-blown legal document on the Department of Education website. And it's clearly defining student liberties in the public school. So Gateways, along with their legal friends, Alliance Defending Freedom, they did publish this small pamphlet. It is, again, directly from the U.S. Department of Education guidelines about public school students' religious liberties in our country. And so, again, this information, you could look at the source document on the Department of Ed website, U.S. Department of Education website. It's ed.gov, and it's as you might imagine, it's a very full legalese document. Department of Justice signed off on it, right? But it is very, very freeing to realize that according to the guidelines from the U.S. Department of Ed, the students are 100% free to talk about their faith in the public school. The teachers have more guidelines that relate to them remaining neutral in the public school, but students have 100% religious liberty. And this is all rooted in what we recognize as free speech in our country. And I like to teach people, like this morning when I was at a church in Hockessin, it's even deeper than that. If you back up from free speech, you have free thought.
Yes.
And then what the founders often wrote about is the freedom of conscience, right?
Yes.
And so these are so important. These issues are very important. It's way past just students feeling like they can bring their Bible to school. This is important for a civilized nation to protect freedom of speech, which is truly rooted in freedom of thought, and another step back, it's rooted in freedom of conscience. And without that, we slide into dictatorship, and as we've seen in Nazism and whatever. I mean, it's just the horrors just continue to roll when we have lost these basic freedoms.
So now let's go back. I have had a sneak peek. I know what's in the pamphlet. So let's begin. I know that it's from 1 to 7.
Yes.
So walk us through what are the
Yes.
freedoms that teachers and students have
Right.
to express their faith in the public school.
It is wonderful because you'll notice as we say what the freedoms are, they are exactly opposite of what we've been kind of forced to believe by really being shut down. All of these are clarified because they have been denied. And I want to really express this to the audience before we go into these. These are very simple statements, but you need to understand every one of them was hard fought in court. And it was fought to bring light to what the First Amendment means for public school students. And it's so important to understand that these rights, even though they've been denied and there's been pushback, someone said no. Someone said enough's enough. Someone said, can you show me, is that truly what our law says? And of course, when they went to court, they clarified that no. What really should be happening is a message of freedom. Schools should be faith-friendly in America. And it's often Christianity that's censored, and that day needs to stop. It really does. So let's go through these. And again, each one is precious and hard fought. The first one of Freedom 7 is that students can pray. They can read their Bible or other religious material, and they can talk about their faith at school. And everybody goes, wait a minute. What about what we hear all the time, that the courts threw God out of the public schools?
Through prayer.
Yeah, Supreme Court threw prayer and the Bible reading out of the public schools. That's another misunderstanding. That court case, Abington versus Schimpf, it was in the 1960s, and it was saying that mandatory prayer that was led and mandated by the public school teacher in the front of the classroom, that is what was inappropriate. And that mandatory Bible reading, again, a public school teacher standing in front of the class saying we're going to read parts of the Bible every day in homeroom, they decided that was too heavy-handed. And you can imagine, right, if our public schools across the land, let's say they were doing that now, parents would react to that because it would seem like they were pushing a certain religion on their student. But the court went on and on in that court case to reassure that in deciding that mandatory prayer led by a public school official was inappropriate, they went on to clarify, but that in no way means that they don't understand that the Bible really is a key part of an excellent education. And that in no way was to stomp on the right that students have to pray. In fact, that's when they instituted this moment of silence that many schools practice now. They did that to reassure and even carve out time that the students could. They didn't have to, but they could use it to pray if they wanted to. So they tried to emphasize that they were not taking away this religious right to pray at school or to have their Bibles at school or other religious material, even when they said no to mandatory prayer and Bible reading.
You do have the right to pray in school. If you're a child in school listening to us, if you're a parent with a child in public school, if you're a teacher with in a public school, teachers can pray as well.
Yes, they can lead prayer groups. They can pray with their colleagues in the, like in the lunchroom or in the teacher's lounge or whatever. They
can do that. So absolutely. Why don't we slide on to the next one? This
Yes.
is great. So the first one is you can pray by yourself or in conjunction with other people.
Yes.
You can pray in school.
Which does lead us to number 2, because number 2 is highlighting that students can organize prayer groups at school, right? And they can also organize other religious clubs. And thirdly, and all within number 2, they can announce their meetings. And again, you notice how specific this is. And I asked my group this morning, and even a child can answer this. I say, why is it so specific? Okay, students can organize prayer groups, but also other religious groups. And, oh yes, by the way, they can also announce and put up posters. They can announce their meetings, right, and advertise their meetings. Why is that there? It's because it's been denied. So schools would perhaps allow for a Christian club to be meeting, like, say, Fellowship of Christian Athletes or some kind of a Christian club. But then they would say, but no, you can't announce it on the loudspeaker. Or you can't have your posters up because this is a public school and this is a religious club. It starts to get entangled once again, even though they've given the students the right to have a club. And so it had to be fought out in court that no, you can't censor their ability to announce their meeting or invite just because their message and their club is religious. You can't discriminate just because a message is religious in nature. And so they had to fight for the right to put their posters in the hallway and make announcements on the loudspeaker for their Christian clubs. And
again, if you just joined us, I have Nixie Larimore. Nixie is from California, and she is a freedom educator.
Yeah.
And she is going across the nation, educating our teachers and students in the public schools on their rights. And this is really empowering. The way she says it, she's moving people from fear to freedom.
Right.
Take us to the third one.
Very good. And the third one is that students can express their faith in their classwork and their homework. This is one of my favorites because it is so discouraging to hear every year about third graders, sometimes fourth graders in our nation. It's very common to have an assignment that the student is to pick someone that is like a hero to them. And they often do a written portion as well as like a classroom presentation about their hero. Now, again, as you might imagine, there are thousands of religious students in the public school system. Many, many families that are faith-based are using the public school system. And so many students want to choose Jesus or their pastor daddy or maybe their youth pastor uncle. They want to choose a religious figure for this report. And we hear reports constantly that they are denied, they are shut down because the teacher thinks she's doing right to say, no, you can't do a religious hero because this is a public school. And again, they're thinking separation of church and state, but they're not thinking the First Amendment, because the First Amendment will take them to this freedom where they understand their students can choose a religious figure, even a report about Jesus Christ. And it is so encouraging to hear the stories that once these students are given these pamphlets, and again, we encourage you to saturate your schools with these. Our vision is a track in every backpack for every public school student. This is not a religious track. This is a track about students' religious liberties. It's really a First Amendment type document, right? And so we encourage you to empower your students with these. And so when they have these, they are correcting their teachers. The teachers will say, oh, no, you really can't do a report on Jesus. You got to choose someone else. And the student will go, wait, no, it's okay, teacher, 1 minute. They run back to the coat room. They get their backpack. They zip it open. They get this. They come back out, and they open it up, and they say, number three. It says right here, and Department of Ed, I can do the Jesus report. And the teachers are themselves becoming more educated by the hand of a child.
I love it. Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings, God has ordained praise. And what you're saying, I had a first-hand experience about that. Last Christmas, we had a Christmas contest in one of the public schools in Wilmington. And we asked the kids to write about their favorite Christmas character. Wouldn't you know it? Jesus.
Of course.
I mean, some of them wrote about the Grinch and some others about different ones, but Jesus was the major character that many of the kids wrote about.
Which is appropriate.
Yes. Listen, this is Christmas. It's about Christ.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to share one story about this, though, because it's amazing. There's a case of a young student who wanted to choose Jesus. And because her teacher had taken our online training, the Gateways to Better Education, Freedom Educators type training, she knew that it was okay. And there was no fear or hesitation like the teacher we talked about with Thanksgiving before she was trained and knowledgeable about these things. The teacher had been trained and she had taken the online module. And so she was very calm to let this young girl do a Jesus presentation. And so it's a beautiful picture of freedom where this little third grade girl is dressed like Jesus and she's even got the beard painted on. It's darling. And she has that trifold presentation board that you see students use when they do their little science reports or whatever. And Jesus Christ is on there and lovely pictures of Christ. There was no fear on her face when she's presenting. And she's enjoying the freedom that many students have not had. They've had a shutdown message. They've had a shameful message. No, that's bad. Scowl on the face. She enjoyed the freedom of expression appropriately according to the First Amendment. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. And again, everyone thinks we're going to have parents upset or, a court case if we allow this. Everything was fine. It was a lovely day when this young student freely presented her Jesus Hero report at school.
As you were saying that, I just thought this is exactly why Jesus came. He came to set us free.
That's it.
Now transition us to the next one.
Yes. Now, number 4 in this pamphlet for student liberties is a little unique because it actually addresses a teacher right. And it addresses the right that teachers have to also organize prayer groups and to pray with other teachers. And so this takes us into the realm, a very rich area of also setting teachers free and telling them that they are free to teach. This is talking about their prayer rights as individuals with other teachers or at school when they're not in the classroom, right? They can't lead prayer in the classroom, but they certainly can with their colleagues. But there's a whole realm of teaching that we offer, Freedom Educators and also Gateways to Better Education, offering instruction for teachers to understand that it's okay to talk about Christianity and the Bible in the public school as it connects. And like you were making a joke about how it obviously connects with Christmas, there should be the freedom to talk about the simple facts of our religiously based holidays, our religiously based heroes, and let's face it, let's just be honest here, our religiously based history and culture here in America. Christianity and the Bible are not contraband subjects. That's how we feel, right? This fear that's been developing, the hostility towards religious expression has been developing in public schooling over the last decades, but it's inappropriate. One cannot fully be educated without understanding the connection between our greatest leaders, our greatest documents, our greatest art, our greatest music. These things often connect back to Christianity. And it's okay for a teacher to explore those connections as long as she sounds like a school teacher, right? She sounds like someone who knows her facts, and she's not pushing or she's not asking for devotion. She's just sharing the facts. Our national mottos, think about it. In God we trust, our Pledge of Allegiance. It's okay that these things mention God. You can talk about that and explain to students why these connections are there in our world as Americans. But you remain neutral, right? And you're very knowledgeable, but you're not purging those things out or avoiding all the explanation, let's say, about Shakespeare when he referenced the Bible or in our literature. We're not afraid to draw those connections because we know we can do so objectively, and it enriches the education.
The truth is that this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values, and we can talk about that. We can, reflect that history. If you're a teacher, you can talk about that from a teaching, historical, objective standpoint.
Right.
Look at the document, it says God, we can talk about that. The Pledge of Allegiance says God, we can talk about that. So things like that, you are free as a teacher to talk about that as long as you are not proselytizing.
That's right.
Or trying to convert anybody or move them from one way to another. But you can speak the truth as a Christian with conviction about what our founding documents say.
That's really beautiful.
Now let's transition to the fifth one.
Yes, the fifth one is exciting too. So number 5 in the pamphlet says that students may be able to go off campus to have religious studies during the school day. So this is mind-blowing to a lot of leaders. Like, wait a minute, did you say that public school students can be released from school during the school day and come to a church or come to a separate location for religious instruction? And the answer is yes. It's called release time instruction, and it's been going on for many decades. But again, another instance of something that is very little known. And we might expect that it wouldn't be legal, but it is. Now, I know in Delaware we pride ourselves on being first in many instances, right? The first state, first. But in these First Amendment liberties, we are way behind on number 5 because I am not aware of any release time instruction happening in Delaware at all. But in California, it's been going on for 70 years. So we're way behind enjoying this freedom. So again, it can happen, and it's just a matter of going through some of the paperwork and approvals. But it can happen in Delaware. It just requires people to use the freedom that they have.
This is absolutely mind-boggling to think that your child can be released from school and to go to an event at church, religious instruction. That is, to think that these rights exist today.
Right.
We don't need to do anything. They're already protected today. All that we need to do is to do what we're doing, to share this information with you and empower you to know that this is for real. You can go to school tomorrow and exercise these rights because they are your God-given rights, and they are already protected not only in the First Amendment of the Constitution, but in addition to that, it has been tested in court. And this, what you're hearing is the Supreme Court has said, yes, these rights belong to you, and you can exercise them.
So just so you understand what this looks like, because it is a brand new idea for most people, right? So I'll just use the story of my own life, right? So every Friday, when I'm home in California, right, students from the nearby elementary, they are allowed to come to me. We drive a van and take several trips and bring students to my church, which is close to the elementary school. They come to me last period every Friday, and we study the Bible and we sing songs and I share the gospel. I have no restrictions in this class because it's off-site, it's off-site of the public school. And as a teacher in release time Bible instruction, I can proselytize, right? I can share the gospel because this is release time instruction. It's happening at a church, right? And the parents have signed permission that their child can attend. Now, again, you can't require that release time instruction happen for every student. That would be too heavy handed. But we can offer it to our student bodies. And I want you to know that some pastors in Florence, South Carolina, they found out about this and they were thrilled, right? Surprised, but thrilled. And they got busy. And they have 800 students in release time instruction in one city of Florence, South Carolina. And that's only their middle schoolers. They decided to offer it at their middle school level because the middle schools in town conveniently had a church really close, and so they could allow the students to even walk. And many times, many instances, they are walking from the public school to the church that's nearby, and they've hired teachers to provide this class, this Bible release time instruction during the school day. It's wonderful.
This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
To God be the glory. Now let us get to the
Yes.
sixth one.
So number 6 is you can express your faith. This is talking to students. You, a student, you can express your faith at a school event. So we talked about homework or in the classroom discussions, right? But this would be a school event. So one example I have to share from Delaware is a talent show, right? So in southern Delaware, we'll say Sussex County, this was many years ago, so it doesn't reflect poorly on who's in leadership now, but many years ago, there was a group of seniors at a Sussex County high school, and they were very strong in their faith. And these girls had a plan that they were going to do Jesus is My Everything type skit for the school talent show, which allows students to pick acts and present different acts in this talent show. And they were so thrilled with the opportunity they believed they had to share the gospel through this act, this pantomime, beautiful pantomime about a girl who makes all the wrong decisions. Her life is just bottoming out. And then it shows how Christ comes into her life and redeems her life. Very beautiful. Uses a Christian song in the background. Very powerful. In fact, you can watch it still on YouTube. It's called Jesus is My Everything. And I think the one you can choose is called Lifehouse. It's a very good example of what the girls wanted to do. So they went to sign up, and the principal told them, girls, you can't do a Jesus skit at a public school talent show. Now again, he's so strong, but he's so wrong. He thinks he's got it right. He wants to do it well. He wants to obey policy, but he was wrong. The policy, this is what the policy is, and this is what the practice should be. He should have known that students can express their faith at a school event. But he didn't. He was thinking separation of church and state. He wasn't thinking like a lawyer. He wasn't thinking the First Amendment. And so he laughed at the girls and he told them, you can't do a Jesus skit at a public school. And they believed it was true because this is their principle. So they were discouraged, and they're walking down the hall discouraged. And one of their favorite teachers, I won't use his name, but he's a hero in my mind because he's a freedom educator. And he said, girls, what's the matter? Because these girls are usually sunshine, right? Mm-hmm. They're Christian, strong girls, and they're usually just sunshine in their school. And they go, oh, sir, we were just told we can't do this skit, and we were so psyched. We had guys that were going to help us. We needed a cast of 12, and we had it all set. It was going to be beautiful. We were going to share the truth of Jesus Christ with our entire student body before we graduate. But principal said we couldn't. And he did a double take because he had been to one of our, in fact, he was there the day I met Eric Brewer with Gateways to Better Education. Nicole Tice's first event with Freedom Educators at the Delaware State University campus. He was there being trained with us. And he goes, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right to me. It used to sound right to me, but not after the day I was trained. Not after the day I saw this pamphlet. So he's like, girls, wait a minute. Come in here for a minute. I don't think that's right. I just got some training with Delaware Family Policy Council, Freedom Educators. This was 2011. And he said, I don't think this is right. So just hang with me for a minute. He picks up the phone. He calls Nicole Tice at Delaware Family Policy Council. And she verifies. She makes a quick call to Alliance Defending Freedom just to make sure she's right. That no, these girls should be allowed to do this skit. And so Alliance Defending Freedom provided a letter, just kind of putting it all in nice legal terms on legal letterhead, just reassuring the principal that this would be okay. And so Bill, I'll call him Bill, he takes the letter to the principal. And he presents the fact that, you know what? I'm remembering from some professional development training I got, these girls really can do this religious-based skit. And it's right here, you know. And the principal said, I don't care what that says, because I don't want this can of worms. Remember the fear and what they're afraid of, a can of worms. If we have a religious skit, some parents might fuss, some students might fuss. We'll have the newspaper doing interviews. We might have a court case. I don't want it. We're going to shut it all down, right? We're just going to purge it out. Tell the girls to choose something else. And then our teacher, we'll call him Bill, the teacher did something very courageous. And it's what we all must do once we know our freedoms. We must know our freedoms, we must use them, and there will come a time we have to defend them. And so he very politely said, sir, I'm not backing down on this one. I know the law, and you've been presented with a legal summary. You now know the law. We need to do the right thing. We need to get religious liberty right in our school in this instance, and I'm not backing down. If you will not choose to do the right thing, I will go to the parents and involve the parents. I will inform the parents, right? And the principal still dug his heels in. So the teacher did. He went to the parents and he said, your girls want to do this amazing skit and they really are allowed, but the principal's a little uneasy. He's not really confident. You're going to need to get involved. And they did. They got involved and they said, I really want you to look at this again, because I'm understanding that the girls have the right to do a religious-based skit in the school talent show. And so the principal responded by calling a school board meeting. Okay, all right, I don't want it, but the parents involved now, that's huge. And the teacher was standing firm, so he called an emergency school board meeting. And this morning with my audience, I asked them to pretend they were the school board. How would you vote? What would you decide to do? You know the facts, because the legal presentation has been made, right? But you're concerned. You're worried about, oh, it's going to be a mess, and we don't have any money for a lawsuit, and parents are going to be, oh, I don't want it. So you have the principal saying, let's not do it, but the principal is presenting the facts. And I asked the audience to vote. If you're the school board, what would you vote? Would you say, let's do what the law says? Or would you say, let's just skip this one? And every one of the people in the audience this morning raised their hand for do what is right. Do the right thing. Get religious liberty right. And they scolded the principal. They said, listen, if this is what the law says, this is what we will do. The law is the basis for our policy. And it's not only the basis for our policy, it must be the basis of our practice. And this is very important. I can't stress this enough, Gloria, because most schools have good policy, but they're in books that have dust and they're stacked. The practice is censorship. Yeah. So we must go back to good policies. And so they scolded the principal and they said, you must apologize. Let these girls do their skit. And they won first prize. And they got a standing ovation. And get this, the teacher that awarded them the first prize trophy, she praised the girls for sharing such a wholesome message. She knew they were free. She had it right, but the principal did not. So our passion is to see every teacher, every principal know the law and get it right at school. And for every student to know their rights and to be exercising their rights. And together it just starts spinning in the right direction, right? The teachers are protecting the religious liberty in their classroom or in their school concerts or in their school presentations. And then the students themselves are sometimes correcting and offering this pamphlet to their principals and their teachers that are misinformed. And it just starts spinning in the right direction, and we love that.
This is a beautiful, beautiful story. Wow, what is the last one? The last
one is kind of piggybacking off of the idea of events. One of the key events in a school, of course, is graduation, right? And every year, you'll see this in the news every year about graduation speakers. These are student speakers that have been chosen based on their outstanding merit to speak at graduation. And often they are asked to not mention Christ or to want to pray or express gratitude that has religious phrasing to it or whatever. But that's inappropriate. Often it is the religious student that shines at school, right? The one who does have the support of truth and morals from their religious instruction. They have the support of perhaps a healthier family base, and they often are the ones that are chosen for a graduation presentation, and they should be allowed to speak as individuals. They're not representing the school, and so they have the freedom of speech in that forum, even though it's a school graduation.
Wow, if you're listening to me, if this must be as beautifully shocking for you
Right?
as it is for many of us to know all these 7 rights that you have in school as a teacher and as a student to express your faith publicly in the public school. You can pray in the public school. You can meet with others in the public school, have a Bible school club, and be able to announce it as well. You can even go off of the school campus to a church to have religious instruction as part of the school day and be released to do that. You can do skits at school. You can have express your faith in your classwork. Do a Jesus project. It's cool. And it goes on and on. There are 7 rights that you have as a teacher, as a student, and also some for teachers as well.
Right.
The ability to represent your faith, but for a teacher, you are not going to be proselytizing. But other than that, you can be a Christian in the public schools. You can speak and represent your faith in the public school. This is absolutely freedom from fear to freedom. That's why they are called freedom educators. Now, tell us where they can get this pamphlet.
Yes, so this pamphlet again is printed by Gateways and Alliance Defending Freedom, and it is available at the website gogateways.org. So it's very easy to remember, gogateways.org. And there's, of course, a little shop tab, and you can buy these. They're $8 for 50. And we really challenge parents that are using the public school and teachers, even churches, to get on board and see one of these tracts in the backpack of all the public school students in their life. The youth groups, even a classroom set. Right now I'm offering a free classroom set, right? It's a set of 25. I'd be happy to mail it to you. So you can call me too, and I'd be happy to provide you with what I call a classroom set. Because again, every student that's in a classroom should get this and understand it. We're hoping that students will see their teachers be a lot more open about these federal guidelines as well. And then the other thing we can have a conversation about is just how free teachers are to talk about the Bible and Christianity in an objective academic way. It's okay to talk about, like, for example, the religious aspects of Thanksgiving or Christmas. And concerts, actually the Supreme Court suggests sacred mixed with secular in the winter concert, right? It's okay to have sacred aspects represented. And the Supreme Court is saying when there's a mix, you have both secular and sacred, that shows that the school is objective. But Gloria, what we've had is just one side,
Secular.
only the secular. And no, that Christmas tree has to come down and that creche has to be put away. Not really. These are symbols of the holiday, and when they're mixed with Santa and the menorah or whatever, that shows objectivity. I really want us to work together to see that the day is gone when only Christianity is slid off the table. It's inappropriate. And it's the only one that matches the holiday of Christmas. So why can't we teach our students about the meaning of the holiday in an academic manner?
Absolutely. And it's the only one that matches our history as a nation. This is really, for me, very empowering, and I hope it has done the same thing for you. Again, you can get this information, you can get these pamphlets. We are completely out of time, but I wanted to make sure that we get all these details to you because I feel empowered. And if you have any child in your life, as a child or grandchild, empower them to know who they are. If you're a teacher, please empower yourself. Take this, share this video, let people know about it, that these rights are here, and this is where they can get the information on how to exercise these rights. We are absolutely out of time. Dixie, another thing that Nixie does is that she can go around to provide this training. She can come to your church. She can come to an organization, and Nicole Theis's organization has a training for teachers. They just finished one last month, right?
Yes, we had a training for teachers on October 5th, and we had representatives from the Alliance Defending Freedom. We had legal counsel there. I gave a little blurb about teachers having the freedom to talk academically about the Bible and Christianity. And we also had a representative there from Christian Educators International. So this is the ability, this man was presenting the fact that Christian teachers can choose a union with Christian Educators International, and they can actually slide out of the normal teachers' unions that are often liberal leaning.
Wow, this is another thing. We don't have
Yeah,
time for
right,
that. But
right.
if you're a Christian teacher, listen up. You can actually move out of the teachers union, and you have an alternative. There's a Christian alternative to the
Yes.
secular teachers union that you can be a part of. You can choose to be a part of it. But again, we're completely out of time. I pray that this has empowered you,
Yes.
and I pray that the voice of God has gone out, and that through this program, both teachers and students are empowered to take their faith boldly into the classroom and to represent Jesus Christ and to express Him in all that they do. Thank you so much for watching us today.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Nixie, for coming
Pleasure.
and sharing this just wonderful message of hope and empowerment just in time for Christmas. Thank you guys for watching us today. Like us on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.